All right, that's better. So you'll start to hear me in about a second, so do not worry. I'll just write that down. Audio fixed. There we go. All right, so now I'm starting to hear lots of feedback. I'm going to pause that so I don't hear it anymore. Okie dokie. Sorry about that. It seems my very fancy microphone has a very fiddly USB connector where you plug it in and it lights up, but if it's not in all the way and exactly straight, she's not happy and she doesn't work. So I don't know why it's a she. So there we go. It's back, so you should be able to hear me now. I'm just going to double check I can hear me. Let me just make sure it's all coming through okay. I'm going to just play there. So you'll start to hear me in about... There we go. Excellent. All right. So you just missed my jokes at the start, but hey, you know, that's okay. So welcome to the Bendigo Tech School. We are good to go for today's live session. Now, this is a follow-on from the previous Illustrator session we had last week, which was our beginner class. We're calling this intermediate. So in a previous episode of this live stream, if you remember last week we were just chatting about Illustrator, having a look at the interface and how it all operates, talking about vectors and talking about those fun things, fill and stroke. So what I might do is I might have a quick recap of that. I'm just going to show it on the screen in a second, and then we'll move on into what we're going to look at today. So if you remember last time, we just used, I believe we had, let's go to my extra keyboard on. Excellent. So now I've got a couple of things running. All right, so I'm just going to jump straight into doing an A4. Alrighty, that should kick up in a sec. There we go. Alrighty, so what we talked about last week was how Illustrator uses vectors. We talked about that by, let me just demonstrate again really quickly. So just a quick recap, just in case we have some new people that have joined us, which I believe we have. So let me just show that. So we obviously have, when we create something in Illustrator, we have a fill color, and we have a stroke as well. Think of the stroke as your outline. There we go. And if I press A for direct selection, we can see that this shape is actually made up of 4 points. These little anchors here that they're called, and they are vectors. And so you can see that they have an X and Y coordinate. And if I move those anywhere along that space, basically that path there redraws itself to follow those anchor points. And in the case of something like a circle, we also have these handles, which we can control the path of as well. And so that creates obviously that shape there, and that is our vector. And the reason why we have vectors obviously is because they can scale I was going to say indefinitely. I guess that kind of works too, or infinitely. You know, they both work, but you can scale these, you can change the sizes, and the quality is always perfect because it's essentially redrawing the shape every single time instead of using the pixels that it has, because it doesn't use pixels. So that was what we talked about last week. And so the goal of these sessions is to, I'm going to delete that now, is to actually create something in Laser Cutter. So the last session that we're going to have on this is production. Now I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to do production, obviously, because we are not at the tech school right now. I do have a laser cutter at my place, so I might see if I can use that one and show you how to do some production work. Or, of course, we can also send those documents potentially to the tech school and see if we can't make them there. Maybe we might even see if we could hook Matt up for a live session or even a pre-recorded video maybe, and show you how we take the final files and cut them on laser cutter. That might be cool just to see how it all works. So today's session is going to go a little bit more in depth into that. Okay, what we're going to do now is we are going to look at how we're going to start to create something that we can actually produce, something we can create in the laser cutter. All right, so that's the focus of this session. I'm going to go through those details using things like Pathfinder. I know I talked about Pathfinder briefly last week. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to talk about things like offsetting paths and outlining and those kind of things. All the tools that you need to easily create something in the laser cutter. So that's going to be my focus today. And then the session before that, the following session, what I think I might do is leave that for a session where you can actually create something yourselves. All right, so have a play in that time, and then hopefully send some stuff to me, and maybe I can work with you and we can see how we go from there. So we'll see how that session goes. So today, like I said, is just talking about how to create something for laser cutting for production. So let's get into it pretty quickly. So let's have a look. I guess it comes down to what you want to make. All right, so what is it that you want to make in your laser cutter? Now, I think what you have to think about, obviously, I'm just looking around at some stuff that I've got around here. Let's have a look. Yeah. All right, cool. So if you want to look at something, it's going to be, I guess, a flat pack. Okay. So the laser cutter is cutting on X and Y axes. As we know, Illustrator uses X and Y. There is no depth to this. It's not like a 3D printer. So whatever you create, it needs to be able to be made flat and then maybe put together, maybe constructed. Okay. Maybe you're going to have parts that join together, that interjoin, that slot in to create a birdhouse. Or maybe you're just going to have multi-layers of things. So let me show you something that I made. All right, let me show you something. Wow, I just dropped half of it. All right. So I'm just going to switch the camera across to my big head mode. Give us a second. All right, so I might just try and show you something like this. So this is something that I made for my son. All right, again, you can see it's a flat pack, right? We have multiple levels of depth here, though, by using different sized materials. I'll try and kick it up there. Just gonna pull it down. So different sized materials. So you can see I've got 6mm there. And you can see the board itself is 3mm as I put it through. I'll see if I can tilt it. There we go. And then if we have a look at this, so that actually spins around. And this is actually using a different material as well. This is using an MDF, a 6mm MDF. So that's why I've got that nice kind of lip and it's raised up there. And the reason why I used MDF for this is because it's nice and strong. And it's also quite smooth, which is why I can get that kind of turning action of the orbits here. And we can also, if we really wanted to, I'll just kind of move one of those planets out of the way. We can also take those out. So there's those kind of solid rings. So you can see here everything has been cut on the laser cutter. All the designs we've done in Illustrator. Okay, the text obviously quite easy to do that in Illustrator. And then if we grab a planet here, those designs there, so they're all done in Illustrator as well. So you can see I've cut around those shapes and I've engraved around there. So that is something we can create quite easily. 2D puzzles, those kind of things. And you can see, I'm just trying to do this so it doesn't fall everywhere. It's quite geometric. Okay, so we're just using lots of squares, lots of circles. You can see to create something like this planet here, it's just a whole bunch of little circles, okay, and some stretches, and I've used some Pathfinder to kind of take things out. So something like that is super easy to produce, okay? So you might want to produce a puzzle. So I'll put that back on Rafi's desk. Let me just leave that over there. Or even I've got a bunch of these little things that I've been making for Raf's friends. Look, super simple little bag tags, key rings, whatever. Okay, so again, really quick to produce. These in the laser cutter. You can see I've just got my shape there. In the shape of this pig here, it's just, again, just geometric shapes, just circles. So creating, designs using shapes. And of course, we have a little cow. But again, real simple. And then I've done what we've got here, this offset kind of path here. I've done this extra path, which I'll show you. And I've used circles to make that. So I might, for today's example, let's make one of these. Okay, I know I did a cat last week when I was showing you showing you vectors and how they work. So maybe we'll make some kind of little key tag today that we can laser cut really quickly. So I'm going to switch back to the screen. Wonderful. I'm just going to check and make sure everything is okay. Wonderful. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's look at making a little keyring. I think that'll be our laser cut project today. And I'm going to use some more intermediate tools to do that, to kind of make this design. So I'm going to make the pig. I like the pig. All right, I'm not going to use an image like I did last week where I was kind of using the pen tool and tracing from an image. We'll make all of this from scratch. It's nice and easy to do that. So let's do our pig. And across, as I go doing this, I'll explain what I'm doing and explain some of the tools that I'm using. So let's go. So first things first, I'm going to make the circle. All right. So I just held shift when I did that, which is why it made a uniform circle. If you don't hold shift down, you'll notice you can kind of constrain it all over the shop. Okay. But even if you do that, all right, if you look up here in the right-hand column in transform, we can go and we can change this back to be a uniform value. So I might say 120 and I might also just say 120. Okay, oops, X and Y. I was in the wrong column. Let's try that again. Let's go 120 and 120. There we go. So we're back and we have that uniform circle as well. So you can do it by hand or you can also use the transform controls in the right over there as well. All right, and again, your little dots, whenever you see those, you have more options, okay? So you can see when we do that, we've got more options that we can use here. So scaling strokes and effects as it scales down. So in other words, that stroke size will slowly get smaller as opposed to staying at 2 points. That's what that's all about there. So you do have more options hidden away. That's where the advanced options are generally hiding, in those 3 dots. And remember, like I said last time, if you do use these a lot, so let's say you're using these scaling tools a lot, okay? If you go up into your window, you have an option to basically pull it out of that sidebar. So I'm going to go into scale. Well, scale's in transform, isn't it? I'm going to go transform. And there we go there. So now I have that separate panel floating around, so I don't have to keep, looking at this right panel over here. And I don't have to worry about doing that more options every time. So it's just sitting over here. And of course, this is where having a couple of screens, or even one screen with quite a lot of space, is really handy. I'm working on a larger screen here that I bought for the sake of these live sessions, actually. And so what we're looking at over here is basically I've got space to kind of put my controls, and I can still see my full A4 page that I'm working on. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure my stream's going. Cool, my stream's going great, so I don't need to see that anymore. I'm just going to close that down. All right, so I'm just going to slip back across here. All right, so let me just make sure everything is working. I just want to make sure. And so what we're... Wow, there we go. I'm very loud. I'm going to turn that down. Cool, everything's working great. So yeah, so you can see the bigger the screen you got, the more real estate you have. Obviously, there's the more tools you can have at your disposal. But like I said about last time as well, is you'll start using those shortcut keys quite a lot more, and that'll make life a lot easier for you. Okay, so let's kind of do that. So we've got our pig. Now, because we're using a laser cutter, color at this point is irrelevant. We don't need to worry about a color because we're not going to be using that right now. I don't need a fill color, so I'm actually going to get rid of the fill color. And I'm going to go into none. So now we have basically I'll bring that stroke up so it's easier to see on the screen. I'll bring it up to say 3 mil. So now we have a circle, but it is a hollow circle. So I can show that by simply holding the Alt key and then moving that. There we go. And you can see if I change that, oops, I always press the wrong one. If I change that fill color, there we go, to see-through, and I'll change that fill color to see-through. There we go. You can now see the shapes under it. Okay, so if we go back and we look at the layers, we talked about layers before. I'm just going to go to Window, Layers. We can see the layer order. Okay, so this ellipse is below this top one, so this is actually on top of it. All right, it doesn't matter too much when it comes to laser cutting at this point in time because of the way we're going to do this in our final stages, but it's still pretty important to kind of get your layers sorted. All right, so make sure you know where things are going. So if I, for instance, made that fill color, there we go, solid white, you can see because it's above it, I now can't see that shape under there. All right, now why this is going to be important is depending on the laser cutter that you're using, all right, even though you can't see that line, your laser cutter might actually see it, okay? So it might pick it up. And when you go and cut something, you're gonna find that it's gonna actually cut that circle out as well. And that's happened quite a lot with our students, where they're creating something and they have done something like this, they've got a fill color, and they think these 2 lines are separate like this, but of course it's not. It's actually sitting under there. And when they go and cut it in a laser cutter, they get this big dirty cut through there, and they don't know why until they go back and have a look and go, oh, whoops, that line's actually there as well. So that's why I think it's probably better to work, there we go. It's better to work with no fill color here. So you can actually see every single line that you've got. So you know what lines to get rid of, okay. The stroke at this point is also not that important, depending on, again, what laser cutter you're using. Some laser cutters, I know the one at Tech School, for instance, likes this line here to be 0.01, which is the cutting line. The laser cutter I use, it doesn't matter. As long as there's a line there, it'll work fine because I tell it which is the cut line. So anyway, so there's our shapes. I'm going to get rid of this one here. All right, and obviously this is intermediate, so let's show you some more intermediate tools, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this up. Now, if you remember my little piggy, I'll bring him back up there again. So actually I might just switch to my other screen because then I can actually see my live feed. There we go. So you can remember here, it's a bunch of concentric circles, all right? So you can see I've got an outside circle and then I've got an inside circle. Now, to do that inside circle, the easiest way to do that is to do Control-C and Control-V. Now, that's obviously your copy and your paste. Now, let's see, my mouse sometimes goes a bit silly. Okay, so if I select an item here and do Control-C and Control-V. Oh. Let's try that again. Too many screens. Control-C, Control-V. What's going on? Control. Oops. Let's just see why is that doing that. Let's start again. I think I may have. Goodness. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, there we go. My screen's being a little bit silly. Sorry. All right, let's try that again. Oh. All right. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Control C, Control V. Sorry, I've been working on a Mac all day, and so I've been used to pressing Command C and Command V. That's the biggest problem with my brain. When I switch between Mac and Windows, my brain is still working in Mac mode at the moment, so I was pressing Command and it wasn't working. So Control C, of course, and Control V. So let me just delete that and start again. All right, so I want to copy this circle here. Now, if I do Control C and Control V, you'll find that it will generally just paste it on the scene, okay? And you can kind of see it's a little bit out of whack. So what we can do is we have another option when we paste. We have Edit, Paste in Place, okay? And what that does is it pastes it directly in the place that you copied it from, and that's super handy. All right, so now if I want to make this circle a little bit smaller, but still be concentric, if I hold the Alt key and the Shift key, there we go. So you can see what it's doing is it's scaling it in from the center, okay? So if I don't do that, if I just hold Shift from a corner, it scales from that corner, okay? But if I hold, if I hold the, oh, I've got too many. If I, oh, I'm still macking. All right, if I do Control Z to undo, there we go. So I'll do that Edit, Paste in Place again, and then I'm going to hold the Alt key and then Shift and. Hey, buddy.
What are you designing?
I am doing an Illustrator class today.
But what are you designing?
Oh, we're going to make. So Raf's here. If you want to say hello, everyone. We're doing the pig. We're going to make one of these. You know, a little pig keyring thing that we made. Cool. You can stay and watch if you want. It's up to you. Nah, not interested. Not interested. No, what can I say? You know, I'm no Wally Kazam. All right, so let's go back. I'm going to hold Alt and Shift. And there we go. So you can see I can scale it down by holding Alt and Shift. And that makes me quite easily make that little internal shape. Oh, and of course, Russ left all the doors open. So I'm just going to scoot everybody out. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we have that kind of concentric circle in there. All right, now if you have a look, I've got a smaller two, I guess, more oval shapes. So let's do those. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna keep using these same shapes. All right, I'm gonna scale that down there. Oops. All right, Control, sorry, I'm just, my brain is just using this Mac. All right, so let's just scale that back down. I'm gonna copy that, and I'm gonna paste that in place. And then I'm gonna do Alt and Shift. And I'm, oh, goodness, sorry. I really should jump on a Windows machine for about half an hour before I start these sessions so I can get my brain back into it. All right, so, oh, goodness. All right, Control Z. There we go. All right, Control C, Control, Edit, Paste in Place. There we go. Alt, scale down. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to kind of pull that one down there to get that kind of oval shape that I had there as well. Now, what you'll notice is when you kind of move these things around, there's these little kind of pink lines. They're your guidelines, okay? So sometimes they will try and line up with certain elements, like they'll intersect with that line there. If I move it across, it'll intersect with that. Or it'll try and find the center of an object and it'll try to intersect with that. So it's trying to be clever. All right, but I really want to have this exactly in the middle of this shape. So then we have some more advanced tools as well. So if I select one shape, okay, you can see in this right panel, it shows me some options for that one shape over there. If I select two shapes, those options will change. So now you can see I have more options. I have some align tools and some pathfinder tools. So what I'm going to do is if I select all three of these things, I'm going to hit this align tool, and there we go there. What it's done is it's aligned everything dead center. You probably didn't see that because I was already pretty much centered. So I'm going to move it across there. I'm going to select all three and do the align center. And there we go there. So everything to align it into the center of that shape. I can use this align here, which is vertical align, and it aligns it all there. So really quick to start to align some shapes by using those tools, but you'll only see them when you select multiple because obviously the align is there to align with something else. So when you don't have that other align shape up there, you've got nothing to align with basically. So let's go back. All right, so I'm gonna bring that down. I'm just trying to make that pig's nose, okay? And I'm gonna do that same trick I did before. I'm gonna do Control, I'm gonna tell myself before I do it. Control C, and then I'm gonna do paste, and then I'm going to then press the Alt key and Shift and scale that in. And then we have that nose that we're working on there. I'm going to show you another little trick, okay, to do this as well, even easier. So I'm going to delete that. So let's just say you do want another shape that's going to be either expanded upon this or shrunk inside. And you don't want to do that whole copy and paste thing. This is a super handy tool. If I select one of those, you get this thing called offset path, okay? And what that does is it offsets your path by an exact amount. So I'm going to say 4 mil. I'm going to make them round joins. And you can see there in my preview, it's showing me exactly what it's going to do. Okay, it's got that offset there. So that way I'm making an exact offset of that original shape. So no copy and pasting, no trying to scale and drag. Just one click, I know exactly how far apart I want it, and then it's done. Okay, so there's my pig's nose there as well. All right, what else do I have my little pig? All right, cool, I have the two little circles. Now, I'm just looking at my pig and I can see that it's not really how I wanted it. So I'm going to just deselect these. All right, so I'm just going to select that one and hold shift to select that one. I'm just going to kind of bring that up a little bit. All right, and then I'm just going to press the arrow keys to kind of nudge it down a bit. Excellent. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do my circles. So I'm just going to hold shift and make that little circle where his nose was. Okay, and I'm going to try and align it in here. Now I'm just going to zoom in. So Control. Oh goodness, sorry. Control plus. Wow, I'm really stuck on Mac today. And then I'm going to hold the Alt key and hold shift, and then I'm going to. Oh goodness, sorry. I'm still. Oh dear. Okay, so I'm just going to. Hold the Alt key and then copy. Wow, not in good form today. Okay, let's scale out. Control. Okay, so there we go there. So now we have those two nose pieces that I had before. Now, if I want to center these to this middle piece here, it can be a bit trickier to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold those two and press Control G to group them. So now they're grouped as one, almost like one object. They're still separate objects, but they're grouped together. So the reason why I've done that is now if I do that same trick I did before with a line, I'm going to hit that align tool. There we go there. So it's aligned that directly in the center because it's treating that as one shape, so it makes the alignment a lot easier. Okay, so now we have a little pig's nose here. All right, so now I'm going to start to try and actually make this look like what I really did have. So again, I'm holding Alt, Shift. I'm just going to scale that down a little bit. Okay, get rid of those. I'm going to select all of them. I'm just going to make all the strokes the same. I'm just going to make them 1 mil. All right, so now I had those little kind of roundy little eyes, I guess. So again, if you look at that, that's pretty much made with a shape. So let's make that shape. Okay, so the easiest way to do that, I'll just work over here, is I'm going to do a circle. I'm going to use that offset path little trick that I did before. There we go there. And now we're done. So now I have these two circles, okay? But of course, they only had half of this shape. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to bring up Pathfinder. So we're going to start to use Pathfinder a bit now. So what this is going to do is it's going to kind of like punch one shape out of the other shape. So this is, at the moment, it's still two shapes, okay? But you can see with Pathfinder, now I'm going to go into Window and go into Pathfinder so I can see my more options. So now up here, you can see what it can do. So by hovering over these, it'll tell you exactly what it's going to do. So if I did Unite, it's going to make one shape, essentially. If I did minus front, it's going to take that front piece out of the back, which it just did then. So it's probably hard to see now, but now this is actually, if I press the A key, this is now actually one shape. It's a shape that's hollow in the center. You'll probably be able to see that by, if I go and give this a fill color of, say, red, there we go there. So now we have that eye shape that I had before, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cut these bottom parts off because I wanted to have it as, you know, a half an eye. So to do that, I'm just going to hit the pen tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, actually there's a few ways. I'll show you a few ways to do it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that anchor point and that anchor point, okay? So now we have that shape. All right, but this is an open shape. Because I deleted those two anchor points, you can see there's no path, there's no line here. So it's an open shape. Now laser cutters don't like open shapes. They'd much rather have a closed shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the pen tool I showed you yesterday, and I'm going to zoom up here. And I'm going to click on that point. It's automatically click that anchor point. Now I've got this, and then I'm going to click on that one there. There we go. And so what it's done now is it's now created, so if I press the A cool, it's now, see how it's kind of automatically stuck that together? So now it's created, Control Z, now it's created that new shape. So it's closed those two together. The other thing you can do, if I select both of them and do, now again, I've got to remember my Mac, Control J, there we go, it's going to join them together. So Control J is the same thing as using the pen tool. It created a line between the two anchor points. So the more you use Illustrator, the more of these little shortcuts you're going to find to make it quicker for you. All right, so I don't need that fill color, so I'm going to get rid of that. All right, so now we have, if I zoom out a bit, now we have my little eyelid. So I'm going to put that over there. It's a bit big, so I'm going to scale it. I'm going to kind of do a bit more of a freeform scale. There we go there. All right, and I'll move that over there. Same as I did before, Alt key and Shift will copy it and move it across. There we go there. I'm going to Control G to group them. And then I'm going to, I don't know, why can't Mac and Windows keys just be the same? Why can't we just get along? All right, and now I've got that little pig face there. Cool, 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 we're nearly there, right? So again, now what we have left is the ears, okay? So those ears were a little bit of a different shape, weren't they? So they were kind of like a rounded triangle. So let's make a rounded triangle. So I'm gonna go into my shape tool, my polygon tool. Now remember with the polygon tool, if I click anywhere on the space, it gives me the option of 3 sides. And I'm gonna press the V to select that. And there is my ear. Now I'm gonna scale it up a bit. All right. Now also what I'm gonna do is these little points here, there are radius points. I'm gonna zoom in a bit. So whenever you have a anchor point, depending on where that anchor point is, if I select that, it'll have a radius that I can start to pull down. So I'm going to pull that down because I had kind of more of a rounded ear. So now I've got that nice rounded corner there. If you want, you can do this on multiple. So if I hold multiple points there, I can scale that radius in. All right, now my ear, as you notice in the one that I had, actually had these 2 points that were coming out here and here. That was kind of rounded. Again, a few ways to do that. All right, I'm going to hold this one here. I could do Shift C and convert that to an anchor. All right, and then what I can do is now I've got this anchor handle here. I can kind of move that out a little bit. All right, so I've started to create that. But you'll notice what it did was it is kind of bent it to that point there. So that one there was a little bit of a mess too. So I'm going to kind of go in and make that ear how I wanted it. All right, I'm kind of happy with that. Move that there and move that there. All right, so that's kind of, I kind of like the way that ear's coming out, right? Now I could, oops, a handle. Now I could go and try and do this on the other side as well. All right, try and make it symmetrical by playing around with all of these, but you know, that's really a pain in the bum. So let's just cheat, right? Let's just do the tools that we have to make this quicker. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select the A key. I'm gonna delete that path and I'm gonna delete that path as well. So I've just got these two. I'm going to select that and kind of move it over there and then move it this way. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to kind of move it into the center. And I can tell that by that pink line there. All right. Excellent. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this and then reflect it. So I'm going to use the one side and make an exact same copy on the other side. So Control C and edit paste in place, which is Control Shift V by the way. And then I'm going to hold Shift to move it. All right, now I'm going to go right click, transform and reflect. And what this is going to do is reflect it. There we go. So now I've got a mirror image of that. So now I'm going to join these two together. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to select V and I'm just going to move it till it intersects. See how it snapped together for me automatically? If I let it go, it's done there. So now I have those 2 anchor points that are there. I'm going to do my Control J to join those. There we go. Now we have one shape. And these two here, I'm going to do my Control J to join those. Cool, cool, cool. So now I have basically a perfectly symmetrical ear. It was rounded at the top, so I'm going to select that anchor point, use the radius tool, and round that out. Cool. Now I've got my ear. So again, we're just using these primitive shapes, right? We're just using these geometric shapes to create everything that we've got here. Okay, so now let's get my little ear, and I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to rotate it. I think I will have it exactly 45 degrees. So hold Shift. There's a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to plonk it about there. If you look at the size of my pig, obviously that's not to scale for what I had on mine, so I'm going to make the ear bigger. I'm just going to manually just tilt that a little bit. Zoom in. There we go, I'm kind of happy with that. I'm just going to move it just a touch up. There. Okay, so now I've got that. I'm going to do another trick, but I'm going to do it in a second. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a copy of this. So Control C, Control Shift V to paste it in place. I'm just going to move that one across. Same as I did before, I'm going to right click, transform and reflect it. It's perfect. Okay, so now I have a mirror copy of that ear ready to go. I'm just going to kind of eye where I think it should go, probably about there, but I don't trust my eyes, so I'm going to group that together. I'm going to select all of these because everything's in a group. And now if I do my align center, there we go. Everything's perfectly aligned. I have a very symmetrical piggy. Cool. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this little bit here. We don't need this shape, okay, because we want it to kind of cut around. So again, I'm going to hold that one and I'm going to hold Shift to select that one, and I'm going to use Pathfinder, and it kind of merges the two together, and there we go. So now I have my little piggy. Okay, so we've got the ears ready to go. Finally, if you have a look at my guy here, you can see I've got another line around those ears. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that offset path tool, my favorite tool. I'm going to bring that up a little bit. I'm just using the scroll key on my mouse. There we go. All right, so we've got my pig pretty much ready to go. I'm going to change this to red, and I'll explain, whoops, sorry. I'll explain why a little bit later. So I'm going to change that stroke color to red. Okay, there we go. Ready to go. Now you'll notice I also had this as a bit of a bag tag keyring kind of thing. So I had that little hanger there. So very easy to do. We just go back into our shape tool. I'm doing an ellipse. I'm just going to make a shape. Again, I'm just going to plonk it there. And then I'm going to do Control C, Control Shift V, and then Alt Shift. I'm looking at the keys now so I don't stuff it up. There we go. And so now I'm going to select this one and this one. Pathfinder comes up. I'm going to merge those together. Wonderful. Okay, so now we have our pig. Okay, so that is obviously a very quick run down on using some advanced tools, but now that's ready to go. I can cut this out in the laser cutter, and I will get I'll get that. Right. So that was pretty quick and pretty easy. So let's explain the colors now. So this will make more sense down the track. So as I mentioned in the first video, laser cutting basically has two options. It has a cut and it has an engrave. Okay, so a cut setting means it's going to cut all the way through the material, and an engrave setting means it's only going to cut, because it's an engrave is still cutting to a degree, but the engrave setting is going to basically only go through certain levels of material depending on the power that you use. All right, so I like to separate my projects with that already to go, so I kind of just visually know what's going on. So I know I'm going to cut around this shape and I'm going to engrave this shape. You can also use the cut tool to, I guess, engrave as well. So if you have a look at this little fella here, you can see, I'll try and show it on an angle. You can see that's actually not engraved. What I've done is I've used the cut tool and I've just done it at a very fast speed and a very low power. So it's going to cut the material, but because I made the power so low, it can't cut all the way through it. So we get that nice, perfectly dark line there. So the benefit of doing that is it's very, very fast, but you can only do it in a line because the cut beam is just 0.01 mils. So you get that perfect line, but it's super fast. So I can cut this little keyring guy in probably about 5 seconds. So really, really simple for that. Cool. All right. So that's kind of how that is all starting to shape up. All right. But if I did want to engrave, maybe I wanted to have, this pig face, this little, I don't know, this internal here, actually to be engraved. I didn't want it to be these two lines. Well, I can do that. Okay. But we've got to remember, we need to make sure it's a shape that can allow that. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select that one there. I'm going to use the punch out. There we go. So now what I've done is I've made that circle punch out of that one. That's made it a new shape. Now if I press an arrow, there we go there. So now I have this solid black here. So now what my machine will do is when it sees that solid black, it'll actually engrave all of that. And I can do that, same with all of these. I'm going to change that so it actually has a fill color of black, and that has a fill color of black. All right, and we can start to engrave. Okay, so some other things you can do. I said we don't really need to worry about color, but you can do a few more things in your laser cutter. And I'll just talk about them really quickly now. So in terms of colors, so a laser cutter can have multiple layers as well. So I'm going to say with this design here, I'm going to have red as the cut, so say maybe 100% power, and black as an engrave, and I might say 20% power. But what you can do is you can set certain levels of engraving. So I can have, up to 16 levels depending on your laser cutter of how powerful I want the engrave to be. So think of it like a grayscale. All right. So what can happen? I can say, well, red. I'll just say, let's make this. I'm going to change that to blue. Okay, so let's just say blue. I want the blue to engrave at 50% of its power. So it's going to cut through, maybe not even a mil of the material. Oops, not even a mil. Not even a mil of material. All right, but I might say with black, I'm going to say black is cutting at say 80% of the power. So that's going to engrave through maybe 2 mils of material. So now what you're going to get with your cutout object is you're going to get those different levels of depth. Okay, so you can actually make quite a detailed piece here by changing the levels of depth and changing the levels of engrave. So you can do that quite easily with this as well. All right, so there's our little pig ready to go. And then I can, like I said, I can cut this I can send this to the laser cutter and I can cut it. So that's kind of how you start to use these shapes to create a product ready for production. All right, so to just kind of recap a lot of the stuff that we did, we used shapes, obviously. So we used these basic shapes up here. I didn't use the pen tool at all, I just used the shapes. I mean, it is a very geometric object, but I just used to kind of make those shapes. We talked about then using Pathfinder. If I select, I'm just going to get out here. If I select two shapes, I can use something like Pathfinder, which will open up my options to do things with those shapes, to create outlines, to punch out the middle, to make a compound shape, to subtract and minus shapes, to start to make shapes from shapes by using Pathfinder. Sorry, I'm just going to check chat to make sure everything's okay. Yes, chat's always so quiet. So we can do that, which is very, very easy. I then talked about using the offset tool, which is my favorite tool. So if I do a circle there, I can see offset path, and then I can choose to offset that path by whatever shape I like. In laser cutting, that's probably the most important one. And then we talked about how we can arrange things by, if I select two items, I can use the align tool to align those. Align to the top, align to the bottom, those kind of things as well. Okay, so that is a very simple basic shape. Now it's obviously a 2D shape. So in the last 10 minutes, let us talk about how we create a 3-dimensional shape. All right, I'm just seeing if I've got, I don't really make them. I'll see if I've got anything lying around. I don't. All right, so let me show you how we make a three-dimensional shape. It's not that hard. It's basically like flat pack furniture. So if you've put something together from IKEA, you know what we're talking about. So what we're going to do is we're going to use slots and tabs in our material. So let's just make a very, I don't know, let's make a very basic box or a stand. All right. So what we'll do is we'll get our rectangle tool, and I'm going to create this here. Okay. So I'm going to make it the base of my product. All right. And then I'm going to make a little standy. Actually, you know what I should have done? I should have kept my pig. I'm going to make my pig stand up. Let's use a piggy. All right. I went to all that trouble. It's an amazing pig. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make it so this pig can stand up on a base. All right. It's now a pig frame. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right. So let's do that. So I'm going to get my pig, and I'm just going to get him out of the way. I'm going to be my pig. All right. So then I'm going to create a base for this pig. All right. So I'm going to do that there. Let's round the corners out and make it a nice base. All right. So now all we do is we just need our slots and our tabs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this box here, and I'm going to draw a shape. Now this shape is actually really important, the dimensions. So if I move that to the center, we know we can use our align tool. I'm going to align to the center, and to the center. All right, so it's dead in the center. Now, if I have a look at this shape, I'm going to go into the transform controls up here. I can see that it's 50 mil wide and 21 mil high. So 21 mil from here and 51 mil from here. Now, the 21 is the important one for us. All right. So this is very important if we want to use slots and tabs. And it's going to come down to the thickness of the material. So my little piggy that I've got here is 3 millimeters. Okay, that's the material. But I do have, as I walk away from you, I have another piggy. That's his fatter cousin. And you can see that is 6 mil. Okay, so obviously we have a difference in material. So how do they actually do this? We have a difference in material thickness. So this is going to be really important when it comes to slots. So if I wanted to slot my 6 mil pig into that base, now the material is 6 mil thick, it means that little square there needs to be at least 6 mil so it can fit. All right. If it was 3 mil, this wouldn't slot in and it wouldn't fit, it would tumble. Okay. Same with a 3 mil. If it was 6 mil and I put my 3 mil, it will obviously would just fall out. Okay. So that's what's really important. So if let's just say for today, let's work with 6 mil material. I'm going to say that this little pig here is 6 mil. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go over here and I'm going to make that 6. There we go there. So now that is actually 6 mil high, which is the material size that I'm using. So in theory, that should slot straight into that gap. Now, this is what's important. When the laser cuts, it will actually cut in that shape. Unless I do an offset, it's going to cut a line and it's going to make the shape, the 6 mil shape here. That's going to be perfectly 6 mil. But the little slot I've got is probably not going to be 6 mil. It's going to be more like maybe 5, oh no, it'll be probably like 6.1 or something like that. So it'll be a little bit bigger. So what you want to do is I would then make this a little bit smaller. So I would make this say 5 point, as a guess, I would say 5.2 mil. So I've actually made that smaller than the material thickness, but when it goes to cut this line, it's going to cut around it, and obviously the laser itself, because it's taking out material, is going to make that a little bit bigger. So it'll fit in that 6 mil nicely, all right? If I left it at 6 mil, the material would slot in there, but it'd probably be a little bit loose. So that's something to worry about later when you're actually producing stuff. So don't stress about it now. If I left it at 6 mil, it would still work fine. All right, so now I have that gap there. What I need to do is make sure this here has a tab that's going to fit in there as well, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control-C and Control-V. Oops, I did it again, didn't I, with Command. Control-C, Control-V. Did that not copy and paste? No, there it did, just right on top of each other. Okay, so now I have that there. So I know that that is the right width for that. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to place it under the pig here. Now again, I can just use that Align tool and align it to the center. There we go. So now I have that shape ready to go. It's going to fit in here. Now, of course, it's going to depend on how thick this material is. So at the moment, that's going to fit into that gap there as well. But now we need to make sure that we've got to look at this here. We want to make sure that that width there, okay, is the right height for this shape, okay? So if this material is 6 mil thick as well, that needs to make sure that that isn't any higher than 6 mil, okay? So we're right with that. So 6 and 6. Brilliant. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to then connect that to there, merge it together. There we go. And what you'll notice though is when I did that merge tool, it didn't get rid of that space in the middle. So I'm going to undo that and I'm going to show you why. So what will happen is, if this shape here is not over that point there, so it's not intersected like it is now, if I do that, oops, it needs to just go just a touch so it can actually merge in. So what you'll find is the line here is right on top of each other. So there's actually really no path where it's kind of cutting up. So what I would generally do is I would leave that down there and I would just kind of pull that up, okay? Because we know that it's going to be 6mm where it needs to be. I'm going to select those two. I'm going to merge that. There we go. So now we have our shape. All right. So now we know when I cut around this line here, you'll notice it changed color too. It's basically whenever you merge something, it kind of incorporates the what's the word I want? Attributes of the shape that it's copied to. So now we've got that there. So now if we cut these two, all right, so obviously that'll be, and that will be red for cutting. So now we have this shape here. I'm just going to group that together. So now when I cut these two shapes out, all right, you can see what we've got. So I've got this object here, okay, which is going to fit, oops, that was from last time, which is going to fit into that shape there. And you can see it's a bit higher because I pulled it up to meet, so it would actually merge across. So what I might want to do, if I don't want to have that little gap sitting there, I'm going to go in and I'm going to select these 2 points here. Now that I've got them all connected, and I'm just going to move it down. There we go. So now I know that's going to fit in there really well. All right, so now when I cut this shape out and I cut this shape out, okay, then I know I'm going to have an opening there that's going to slot into, and then we're fine. Now clearly I probably won't do that with a design like this because that's so big it'll just probably snap that, even though it is 6mm. But there you go. So that's how you start to make some slots and tabs. So if we do a more complex version of that, let's start to make a box. So I'll make a square, and I'll make another square here, and I'm just going to make sure that that is, I'll say 6. All right. And then I might get this and intersect it, which is helpful. All right, Control C and Control V. Just going to shift that down. There we go. You notice that sometimes, even though it says it's intersecting, but if you zoom out, you find it's actually really not. So it's really important to make sure that these are right. What you can do, obviously, is we can just cheat and do that. Make sure you do a vertical line. What you'll see, though, is that that stroke and that stroke are different thicknesses. So it looks like it's not lining up, but they actually are. So if I both make that, say, 1 point stroke, you can see they're lined up perfectly. Okay, so make sure, oops, let's just make sure we're working in the same stroke thickness on everything. It'll make it easier. There we go. All right, I've got those two there. And then I'm just going to move this shape out of the way. I'm going to select these two. I'm going to press Alt and Shift. And oops, let's try that again. And drag that across and intersect. Okay, so now we have this shape here. Okay, so what I'm going to do though, I'm going to keep these. I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to move that up there. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a copy of this, Alt key, move that down. All right, and then I'm going to get these two shapes, and I'm going to hold Shift again and move that. Let's try that again. Oops, I'm getting my fingers are getting confused. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so I'm going to grab that. I'm going to hold Shift. Oh goodness, no, I'm not. I'm going to try that again. Move them and hold Shift. There we go. And intersect on the inside. Select those two. Move them, hold Shift. Well, by holding Shift, it's just conforming it to one path, so I'm making sure it's straight. And then, whoops, so I'm going to, oh dear. There we go. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to merge all these together. And you'll notice some merged, some didn't, depending on how much they were covering that line. Control Z. All right, so let's just try doing these individually. We'll merge those. Move those in just a touch so they merge for me. All right, let's merge those together. There's one shape, and then we'll merge those together. Okay, so now we have that shape there. Oops, I may have done one too many undos. Let me just move that back. And then we're going to kind of do the opposite with this. I'm going to select those two shapes, and I'm going to punch that shape out. Punch that shape out. Punch that, oops. That was because that was obviously not aligned up. Let's move that across. Okay. And punch that. Oh, punch that one out as well. So let's just see what's going on there. Okay. So this is going to be a layering order. So we need to make sure that layer is in the right spot for it to actually work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say arrange, bring to front. Okay. Why is it doing that funny thing? It must be a little bit out of whack. Smooth that up a bit. There we go. Okay, so now I've kind of taken all those shapes out. I'm going to zoom out. And now you can see I've got two sides of this cube that I'm making. All right, so now I can select that, and in theory, you'll see that that will start to slot in there. All right, so when I cut these two shapes out, I can then put them at right angles, and that will sit in there. Now, the good thing about doing this is if I just kind of hold Alt and move that across, I now have that one there. All right, so then I only need one more. So you got to mentally think in 3 dimensions. I'm going to move that down there. There we go. So now in theory, I have a box. I have a box that has no lid or floor, but I have a box. So if I wanted to do this better, I could then go and put those tabs up there, and then insert a slot there and there. And then that'll kind of go together. So then we have a cube. So that's how you would start to make something with a bit more depth as well, making sure you know the material thickness. We can talk about other things in terms of making this a little bit more efficient. So in terms of a cut line, what we probably want to do is we probably want to put that right up to there and then get rid of one of those lines so it actually only cuts through once instead of twice. But there you go. So now we're starting to make some 3-dimensional shapes. So I'll just kind of scale that down. Now obviously I've scaled that down, which has now thrown all of my dimensions out of whack, which is another thing kids will do. So I had that perfectly at that size, and they were 3mm gaps, perfect for my material, but then I decided, oh, the box was too big, so I scaled all of that down, but of course now I've just gone and scaled down what that gap was. So it's no longer 3mm, it's now like 1.6, so it's going to throw everything off kilter, and that'll happen a lot. Students will do that a lot. So then I'll have to kind of go back in and make sure I can either manually move those points so they're 3mm as well, or I could redo the shape altogether. So I guess another thing to bear in mind is try and keep your shapes the size you want at the very, very end. So I kind of design everything first before I start punching out tabs and slots and those kind of things, because then I can kind of scale everything how I like it, and then I'll do that final point where I punch tabs out. All right, so that'll probably do us there for advanced tools, because I did probably bombard you with a lot of stuff. So let me just do a bit of a recap. So we talked about using shapes to make shapes. I know I talk about that a lot, but we do. We talked about using Pathfinder to subtract or to add to create new shapes, which are really important. We talked about using the Align tool, which only comes up when you select multiple. You can start to align them together to save you some time. And we also talked about offsetting, which if I select one, I can offset that path. And if I change that from round to strong and then scale that down, you can see you can start to offset that path as well. All right, so we talked about those. So there are all the advanced tools that will help you kind of create your laser cut project. So I'll leave it there for this session. So what would be awesome if you're able to play around with this is start to work on maybe try and make a keyring. I reckon that'd be a good goal. Let's see if everyone can make one of these. Not necessarily a little piggy. Wait, if I just do that just around, I can make it look like it's my head. Yes, I know, I'm a child. Yeah, so I reckon as a bit of a tester, see if you can make one of those. All right. Design it, have it ready, small little keyring, about that size. Let me know how you go. And like I said, maybe we'll cut these out. If not, I'll cut them for you at my place. Or we might send them to the tech school and see if we can cut some out and get them off to you before you go back to school. So I'm going to leave it on that one. That's kind of the advanced tools. We'll be doing the final ones of these next week. I'll also have a bunch of sessions up. You'll notice there's no new sessions up on the YouTube page at the moment. What we're doing, that's changed slightly, is what we're going to be doing is those sessions will go up on the website on Monday, and you book through the website, and then you'll have the link to see the live feeds. We're not putting the live feeds up on the site straight away, just to encourage people to register. It's free. It takes like a couple minutes of your time. It just helps us out. So I'll put a post up on the YouTube channel about doing that over the weekend, so people will know to jump to the webpage, Bendigo Tech School webpage, and book for the session, so you get the live feed, so you can watch them live and you can hear me rambling on and ask any questions if you want to. But if you don't want to do that, that's more than fine. We will just have the sessions up a week later. So all the sessions that we record next week will only be available to people that subscribe no, not subscribe isn't the right word, that enroll or register on our website, and then the week after they will appear for everyone else to watch there. So that's the plan. So have a lovely weekend. Have a go at Illustrator. Let me know how you go, and I will hopefully see some of you on Monday. Yeah. All right, let me just check, make sure everything is good. Chat is good. Everyone's happy. All right, so I'm just going to end the stream now. I'm going to hit end stream over here, and then